Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session. My name is Danny, and I'm the event planner for the New York Reactor Space. Before we start, I have a few things to go over. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Useful links will be shared in the chat. The session is recorded and will be available on demand 24 to 48 hours on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. Which brings us to today's session. It'll run for approximately 1 hour with time for questions throughout. I will now turn it over to our speaker for introductions.
Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us in Boosting Productivity with AI session. And today, both I'm Abhishek Narayan, and I work as a principal product manager in Microsoft Fabric in the data integration team. And along with me, I have my co-presenter, Wilson, as well. And we both will, he's my colleague and a principal product manager in the same team as well. And we both will take you through some of the very, very interesting, fascinating inventions and experiences that we have added in Data Factory. And with this, let's get started. So we have a jam-packed session with a lot of demos related to AI. So with this, let's get started. Let's build some background of where we are coming from, and the whole momentum of conversational AI. You've been hearing Satya talk about AI. You've been hearing, in fact, every leader talk about AI, and it's actually true. And these are some data points from Gartner, which says by 2026. Which is right next year, 30% of work activities involving the use of technologies will be conversationally enabled, right? So it's extremely important that we get used to the conversational AI, and then this will, in addition, also reduce a lot of agent labor, costing up to 80 billion. So you can also see the value that we get by using artificial intelligence and conversational artificial intelligence, and that will help us make more productive. In the sense, things which can be automated as well. Things which can where you can be more productive by using AI, you can actually make things work faster. And then similarly, up to 80% of the organization's digital experience will be delivered to consumers via virtual people. And so this is where conversational AI becomes extremely important for organizations to stay relevant, to stay up to date, and then be more productive. And so with this, let's get started. We have a lot of generative AI technology, and just to give you some context on how things have grown, some important technologies that have really made differences in our lives. Mobile phones, especially if you're coming from as old as me or older than me, you would understand there were life before mobile phones as well. And so when phones came in, there was an invention, and then it skyrocketed, and you can see that growth. It's incredible growth. But then when it comes to internet, it beats that. 7 years, it had 100 million users. When you compare that to social media, Facebook, it's 4.5 years. Now, when we just compare that reference to conversational AI, one example is the GPT models. It just took 3 months to reach that 100 million stats. So you can see the interest from users. You can see the value that users are seeing out of it. And hence, there is a huge amount of users signing up and using AI for their betterment. So that was the context on where AI and GPT and why it's relevant to us in the industry these days. And with this, let's move forward with and let's talk about what we have in for you in AI in Microsoft Fabric. So as you may have used Copilot experiences in Office 365 and in other things, one important thing is about having this experiences in Fabric where all your data estate is, right? So Microsoft Fabric is basically the analytics and data management platform where all your data is. So you do data integration and all the stuff. And this is where AI can help in It can supercharge your productivity. It can do, it can basically generate and summarize actions for you, optimize your time. It can help you up level your skills as well, and then discover insights. And we will talk about the different Copilot experiences. Today, we will focus on the data factory experiences. So we have Copilot that you can use in Fabric for data warehouses, data science, real-time intelligence, and Power BI as well, right? These are all very useful Copilots that you should look into. And today's session is going to be dedicated on the Data Factory Copilot, and we'll show you how you can bring in data, you can transform data, you can do all the ETL, build all the medallion architectures that you would with your data integration tool with the Copilot in Data Factory. So let's get started. And just an overview, and for folks who are new, Data Factory in Microsoft Fabric is the data ingestion or data integration tool that helps you or empowers you by allowing you to bring 170, 180 plus data sources into Fabric. So it has 170, 180 managed connectors, and then a bunch of custom connectors as well that you can use to source your data from different sources and then bring them into Microsoft Fabric. And so we have engines for data ingestion, we call it data movement. Then you have data orchestration, where you can build pipelines which will run in an unattended fashion. And then you have transformations where you can change the shape of the data. You can cleanse the data. And this is very interesting, especially when you get into cleansing the data, transforming the data. You need some skills to understand, to join the data, do all the transformations on top of that data. And this is where we have the AI-powered intelligence and Copilot experiences that you see that cuts across the data movement, orchestration, transformation experiences, so that you can get the data into the one lake in the easiest of manner. You can be most productive when you're building the data pipelines, when you're building the data flows for transformations. And then, Fabric has its own deployment and observability that you can use. And we'll talk about some Copilot skills that will help you observe your data pipelines as well. That's extremely important when you're running these data pipelines in an unattended fashion at nighttime and so on. And so we'll talk about how Copilot gels in and helps you be more productive in each of these steps of your data integration journey. And today, what we will focus on is basically the Data Factory Copilot. We have AI experiences as well. For example, if you've been using Dataflows, you can use Dataflows to extract unstructured data from the web or from a text file. You can integrate with Azure OpenAI Cognitive Services. It's not now Azure AI Services, and you can get the best of AI as well within your transformations. And so those are AI powered experiences. And today we will focus on the Copilot experiences, which will help you build these transformations, build these pipelines, with AI. And with this, getting into more deeper context of what we'll talk about today, boosting productivity, one of the key criterias. And while you're using either a data pipeline or when you're using a data flow, you can use AI to help it translate your natural language input, where you might be focusing on the business, less on the tooling, and hence you can give the business requirements to the Copilot, and the Copilot will try its best in terms of generating what is needed based on your business requirements into and converting that into a DSL, which is specific to, let's say, a data flow. And so this is where productivity is improved, where you can get things done in a much quicker fashion without even having to know or learn those functions like M functions, the custom functions that the tooling provides, or expressions in pipeline that the pipeline provides. And this is where productivity comes in. And then the second set of skills that we'll talk about is summarizing, things which has already been done. And there's many times, for example, when I took my paternity leave, I did some really complex pipelines. When I come come back, I had to understand what those pipelines are, and I had to spend a lot of time in looking back at things and why I did this, what is this happening, and so on. And this is where summary skills makes it super easy, not only for you to look back into things that you have done, but also into collaborative scenarios where you're basically a team working together to kind of build things. And this is where you can understand each other's work in a much easier fashion using Copilot. And then we have another set of skills, which is basically explanation skills. And this is important because I talked about observability, right? Like when you build a pipeline and then that pipeline all of a sudden starts to fail, this is where you need to know why it's failing and what's preventive action that I could take to fix that in the future as well. And this is where the explain skills comes in, like summarize skill, but this goes into the detail of explaining you the problem, and you're hearing this from an expert. So it's probably help you gonna save time rather than you filing a support ticket or going through, public documentation. The Copilot will help you empower, through all these steps. Now, with this, let's get into Dataflows Gen2 first, which is basically the transformation engine. And we will talk about transformations first in the Copilot availability there. It's already generally available. So as we are talking and as you're viewing us, please go ahead, give it a try. And I'll hand it over to Wilson, who will take us through, how Dataflow experiences are making life easier for transformations.
Awesome. Thank you, Abhishek. And as Abhishek mentioned, right, Dataflow, it's our transformation engine. And at the moment, as you go to Fabric as of today, and if you haven't tried that, please go give it a try, right? And as you go into Fabric, you will see you enter data factory, and you will see our data flow. You'll see the Copilot is actually already there, and we already genius this capability, right? What you will see is that our Copilot for data flow will help you to generate queries, some complex query, right? Just a few sentence, no matter a simple sentence or a complex sentence, we will be able to help you to actually create a really complex transformation queries, right? Or if you already have something already running and you just want to enhance it a little bit, right? And you just want to add a few steps, you can do that as well. And then as Abhishek was saying, right, earlier, he was talking about the fact that, hey, someone might have gone maybe on vacation or on parental leave for a while, and they create some other really, really complex, and Abhishek does that a lot to me. When he goes on vacation, he just say, hey, I'm going on vacation. So then I have to take over his data flow, and I have to understand what he built. And then and that's something that we can use the summarize skills to actually be able to, for me to better understand what he did, and quickly being able to go in, either fix something or if I want to enhance it, I can do that as well. So with all that being said, right, let me show you how it works. So let me project my screen. Thank you. And then you see that I'm already inside my my Fabric, and then inside my workspace already. And then inside my workspace, what I can do is that I can create a new item, and I'm going to create a new Dataflow Gen2. I'll call it something different. Maybe call it Dataflow Demo. Okay. Then I just create the Dataflow Gen2, and then you'll see you land on a very beautiful UX that actually helps you to build all sort of things that you need to build on this, right? And on the right-hand side, you'll see that our Copilot is already there, ready for you to use. And then I can click on the get data from, so I can get some data, right? It's not very interesting to use anything without data set available, right? So what I'll do is that I'll pull up my favorite data source, an old data source. Okay, I click on this. I'm just going to simply paste the URL that I have on this one, and then just paste it over here. And then you'll see that I already have a connection that's already connected to this data set. Now press next. And then you'll see that it's doing some work to connect the data source. And very quickly, I see my data set over here. Now, today, I'm just going to select a couple of tables, right? So then I can show you what amazing things that we can do with a Copilot for data flow, right? So I'm going to select the order details, this is a table that contains a lot of information about the order that I have. And of course, I also want to select orders as well, right? So you see that it has all this data set that's talking about where is this order has been ordered from, which employee actually did that, and also the fact that where is this shipping from, where is shipping to. Very prototypical an order table that you would expect. And I just simply click on create. And then you will see inside my Dataflows Gen2, you'll see that data is loaded. And let me adjust this a little bit so you can all see what's going on. And you'll see that my table already have all the information that I loaded early on. Now, I just want to select my order table, and I need to clean some of this data up. So one thing that I have noticed is that if I scroll to the right-hand side, I'll see that, okay, so I see that there's a ship country that has somewhere from either from America, North America. I see somewhere from Europe and all this. Now, all I'm interested in today is to maybe just filter it all by ship country. Maybe from to Canada, right? Maybe something like that. And all I need to do is to type in our Copilot and saying that maybe I say filter all ship country to Canada. See if Copilot can actually help me do that. A very simple language, and I can already tell Copilot to actually, boom, it is able to actually filter this all out. Instead of me clicking many different steps in order for me to filter out, everything is filtered to a ship country to Canada. And then maybe I also want to actually do something a little bit more complicated, maybe a tiny bit more. I just want to rename a column, right? I saw a column saying ship via. I don't really like how it looks in here. So maybe I just want to change it to a different name. All I need to do is just to type in rename ship via column to ship ID, and let's see how it works. And then as Copilot is analyzing it, and you can see that the fact that it immediately changed our ship via column to ship ID, shipper ID. I think that's pretty cool. I can also do something else, right? Instead of, I see that, for example, I have a ship. I also have a ship ID inside this, I also have a ship ID inside this table itself. I don't like it. I want to actually move it beside employee ID, because that's how I like all my IDs to be right next to each other and able to I can actually see all of them in the same place. So very simply for me to actually do that. And there you go. My shipper ID that I just earlier renamed, and now it's now right beside my employee ID. So I can have all the things in the right place. And maybe last but not least, I want to, I see that there is something called a freight column. And I see that, it's good that they have all these into decimal points, but I really want to see a full number. So all I need to do is that maybe I say, hey, for freight, right, change the data type to an integer. Then let's see if you're actually able to actually help me out to actually convert all this without all decimal points, so I can have a good number, and then boom, and you can see that it's all doing that. Now, what I've shown you is that with a few simple natural language, you can really tell Copilot to help you to do some of these simple tasks, right? To actually, no matter it's renaming a column or moving something that maybe from the far right hand of your table, move it to the left side, right? So those are simple actions that you can do. Just with a very simple sentence, you can actually do that. Now, maybe let me do something a little bit more complicated. So let me actually click on my order details table, and I'm just going to expand the order column so actually see what's inside there, right? And let's see all these columns, right? One thing that earlier you saw me saying, okay, so I saw that my ship country, I just want to fill into one country, Canada. But this time, I want to do a little bit more, right? Instead of just filtering it to Canada, what if I just tell it to say that I want to filter it by on all the European countries instead? I didn't tell it what the European country is, but hopefully Copilot is smart enough to help me to actually figure this out. So when I press enter, and you see that Copilot is already have that information behind the scenes and all trained. And now you can see that all these countries are filtered by the European countries itself. So it's really, really amazing. So I don't have to figure out what other European countries are and how to really build that complex a query about, okay, so which country that should I filter? It does it automatically for me, right? Another thing that you can do, maybe something that's more fun, is that, okay, so I see the fact that I have dates in this table, right? It actually have the order date and have a ship date. I just want to understand that how long does it take for my company to receive an order or submit an order, and until it's shipped, right? I don't want to do all this comparison and calculation myself. And maybe I just say, hey, can you help me to create a column to calculate the number of days that would take to ship an order, right? I didn't tell it which column to look at. I didn't tell it, hey, it's this date or the other date. But can I actually be able, oh, you can see, oh, there's an error in here. One thing that we do that easily that we can do is that, hey, okay, so it didn't work very well. Let me undo this, right? And see if I can actually undo what I've done and then back to your original table. And let's try it again, see if this will work, right? I want to create a column, the number of days it'll take to ship an order. Let's see if that this time it will work better. It's calculating. Oh, this time as well. So in this case, as you can see, it's a live demo, right? But as I mentioned earlier on before, you have the ability to undo anything that may not work in this case. Now, one thing that I want to also mention is that, okay, so you can have existing table to do this, right? But what if I want to create a data set myself, something that I didn't import it from, as you saw, I actually got the OData data set, but it's actually not there at all. What if I'm there, I just want to create a new data set, right? So one thing I want to do is that maybe I would like to create a query that is a calendar, right? That starting from 2017 and then up to today, and help me to create as many columns as possible so that I can slice and dice my data, actually type it in that way, right? So they ensure that all the header is easy to read and with space too, right? Let's see if Copilot can handle this and being able to help me create a new table with all this requirement that I have for that. Copilot is thinking, and voila, a table, a brand new data set is just created in front of your eyes, right? All I told is a sentence that I type in. It's quite complex, the languages, but Copilot is able to understand that with this our natural language model, and they're able to actually parse through what I wanted and gave me a new data set with all the tables and all the columns that I needed, and with spaces as well, right? As I actually mentioned that, hey, give me some tables headers that actually have an easy to read space. So that's actually pretty amazing. Now, I'm not quite happy with that, just that, right? I actually want something even more complex. So what if I actually ask it to actually even do it even more for me, right? Not only I just want from the data set from 2017 to today with year, month, and all the things that I wanted, right? But still help me slice and dice, and hopefully you can actually give me, for example, the name of the day, name of the week of the year, and all these things, so that I can actually help me to actually being able to slice and dice this data set, right? And see if Copilot is smart enough to actually help me to do that. And voila. Even though you ask it for something a little bit more complex, it's actually able to do that. And as you can see, it's able to actually calculate which quarter it is for me, which day of the week, name of day of name, and all those amazing things that with just a sentence, you can actually have a brand new data set, or if you want to enhance your data set as well on that one, right? Now, one more thing I want to show, right, is that I want to show how what other things that we can do, right? Once that you actually have this data set generated and created. Now, for example, that I just want to create something like that, right? Something like convert my date column into a new column, change the date to a decade. Can it do that if I just ask it to do it? Earlier on, I'm just saying that, hey, give me the week of the day, but I want you to convert something, right? And you can see that from the date column, it's actually automatically being able to detect or able to compute what decade is, right? And then if you actually look into the query itself, right? If you actually look into the query itself, it actually builds all this amazing query for you, right? It's actually able to understand that, okay, it's able to first of all, pick out the date column by itself and tell it to do that. It's able to go and divide by 10 and then convert all this and round down all this number and then multiply back by 10. I wouldn't be able to come up with this, and it's actually having for each loop inside that as well, and add a day and then convert all this into a decade column, and then give me an integer type that I needed so it doesn't have all decimal place and all those type of things. So all these things Copilot does for you. Now, one more showcase I want to show you what the amazing thing that Copilot for Dataflow can help you do, right? As I mentioned earlier on, right? What if Abhishek, again, will go on vacation and is very happy and just send me this the Dataflow for me to figure out what is he doing, right? So one thing I can do is that I can summarize or to describe this query for me. All right, so I asked the Copilot to actually go and describe this query for me. And then immediately, what it will do is that it will look through this query, look through all the steps, analyze it, and give me a humanly readable summary, and then tell me that, okay, so for the query, it actually is able to create this table, and it actually tell me that it's from 2017. That's amazing to right now, right? It actually tell me, hey, which each column actually does, right? What is the start date, when that has an end date, number of dates, and all the different computation of the columns that it actually has inside this table itself. So then I understand this query with a very quick lens, and now can actually go back in and actually work on this. So hopefully I've shown you a glimpse of how simple and how easy it is to actually use Copilot for Dataflow to enhance and make your work a little bit more efficient, and hopefully that it actually helps you when you're dealing with no matter a simple query or something more complex. It will just put a smile on your face on this. Abhishek, you want to take over?
Sounds good. Thank you, Wilson, for running us through the data flows and explaining us how you can easily work with data flows, even if you have no expertise before of using data flows, or even if you've used data flows and then looking into writing more complex functions within data flows. And sometimes it can be challenging because you are defining M definitions or M queries within your data flows. And so this is where that was a great demo where you can create really complex looking functions based on your business needs. I think you did convert the date column into a decade column. And I didn't even know, even if you let me brainstorm today on a whiteboard, I probably would not be able to create a function that could convert that particular date time column into that. So that was great, great work, and showing off how we can use data flows in a more productive way, much easily. And so with this, let's jump into our next set of demos before we open up for questions. We'll talk about data pipelines. We'll talk about some challenges that we're trying to solve or resolve with Copilot, and let's jump into it. And by the way, this is also available today as preview. And so please go ahead and you can use Copilot experiences in data pipelines as well. So let's get started. What we will talk about and what we've been hearing from customers are basically, troubleshooting can be a challenge when it comes to data pipelines, because if you have used data pipelines, you're basically orchestrating different data entities, right? Like different data functions, like you're running a notebook, you're running a data movement job, which is sourcing the data from, a source and putting that into a destination. And then you're running a data flows. And so there can be, the chances of failures are much high because you're running these in not just interactively, but in unattended fashions. And then the second set of challenges that we've heard customers is, while I can do really complex data pipelining using the data pipeline canvas, I don't know what all activities and even, how to define expressions, things like for each. There are iteration constructs in data pipelines. And sometimes as a user, I may not be very fluent in terms of defining that complex data pipelines. And so can I use the Copilot which can help me get started quickly with a more complex structure of a pipeline. And then it helps me finish that pipeline. So that's second set of challenges. And then, of course, I touched upon this is customers do want to, get into optimizations, performance, and those are the things that we'll tackle as well in the coming months. So with this, let's get started, and we'll talk about what we have today, which is basically ability to generate pipelines using natural language. We can generate from simple to complex pipelines. We can generate, single shot or multi-shot based on the user inputs. So Copilot is pretty interactive. It'll help you even go ahead and ensure that the pipeline has been completely set up. So it's going to get into a conversation till the time you actually input all the input fields so that your pipeline is complete. And then you can summarize the pipelines. You can explain issues and errors. And so these are the things that we'll cover in our pipeline demo. So I'm going to switch to my screen sharing, and let's start with our first Copilot demo. And so what we will get started is, this is basically a pipeline canvas. What you saw earlier was data flows for transformations. Now what you're seeing is pipelines, and pipelines can be used to orchestrate data movement. It can be used for doing complex data orchestrations involving notebooks and data flows as well. And so let's start with this. You have a Copilot experience here on the right-hand side, and I'm going to get started with Copilot. And I'm going to start with very, very basic thing. As a data engineer, let's load the data from my source into destinations. Let's say I'm building a lakehouse platform, and I'm going to populate my bronze layer. My bronze layer is going to be basically simple data coming from my operational DBs and stored there as is. So I'm dumping them into my lakehouse bronze zone, and then I can use the data flows that Wilson showed you sometime back on top of that data, and then massage that data, get it to silver, and then start reporting it from the gold layer. And so this is how my lakehouse platform is going to look like. And I'm going to take you through the first experience, which is loading the data into the bronze layer. Let's get started. And I can use my natural language, so I don't have a script, and I'm just going to behave as if I'm a new user. So copy data from I will mention SQL Server. Maybe let's copy it from my Azure SQL Server. So I'll do Azure SQL Server to Lakehouse, right? I don't know anything else. I'm new to this platform, and let's start with that. And let's see how Copilot can help build a conversation with me and tells me already, okay, you need a copy activity for that. Great. So it adds a copy activity onto the canvas, and then it asks me that let's start with providing some inputs that I need further to help you kind of make a runnable pipeline. And so it's now asking me is provide some information around source and destination connections that I need to connect to. And so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to provide my source, and it's very easy. All you have to use is a backslash, and using the backslash, I can, the Copilot can, the UX can list all the connections that you have already worked on before. And so I'm going to use my SQL Server, as I mentioned before. So I'm going to search for something like a Contoso SQL Server, and the top one, DB, I'll use that one as my source. And destination is going to be my lakehouse, and I have named that Contoso LH to make it easier. And so I'm now easily able to provide these missing inputs. So Copilot and conversational AI is not just about like one-shot generation of something like magic, but it actually behaves as your true Copilot or a helper that stays with you, tells you what are the missing fields, and takes that input in an easier fashion as I'm providing my source and destination. And then I hit this enter button. Now it analyzes this, it fixes this in the code, in the sense the UX that you're seeing, it's actually appending these information as we are chatting with the Copilot. And now it's asking me further level of details, like specify the table name, and I can go ahead and do the job later. And so I'm going to say, let's specify my table name, and I'm going to put, I know the table name, so I'm going to do sales LT customer. So I'm going to copy the customer table into my lakehouse, and I'm specifying in my lakehouse, it should look like sales LT dash customer, maybe one, just to keep it different in the lakehouse so that we can validate it. And then I'm specifying my now table information, which is great. And I can press on this enter, and let's see what Copilot comes back with. So now it's going to be able to parse this table information along with the connection information and then update the pipeline for me. So I don't have to use the UX. I don't have to understand how the pipeline works. And it comes back and says, do you want to run the pipeline? And, why not? Let's go ahead and run the pipeline and see how this works. So this is how you saw as a user who had the need of bringing the data into my bronze layer, and I knew which data that I need to bring from which server. If I knew that was my business need and requirement, I'm easily able to use Copilot to translate that into a data pipeline. And I don't want to complicate it. I don't want to make it look what it did. But if you now want to have a look into what it generated a bunch of JSON for me, just like you saw Wilson generating a bunch of M query. This has generated a bunch of M table with all the information that it took from me. It could even parse the schema name. I provided it the table name as saleslt.customer. It parsed the schema name, the table name, the database name, everything from it using the AI, and it got the destination table name to Lakehouse as well. It defaulted the tabular translator. These are like implementation details, but things like it understands that it's a tabular data and loads it into a Lakehouse table. So it did all of those, and you can see now it actually finished running the pipeline as well. So it helped me made a fully functional pipeline in 3 steps. And this goes on to say that even if you're building a complex pipeline, it's going to continue to chat with you till the time you actually have a fully functional pipeline. So you truly have a co-pilot or a co-assistant or a co-author who's helping you throughout your journey of building your complex pipelines. And so this was very, very simple demo. And it doesn't mean that you cannot do this in a single shot. You can very, very well do this, if you provide the table information and the connection information in the first prompt itself, it would basically have generated the same pipeline for you. And I can show you a quick one as well over there. So let's create a new pipeline and let's try and do the same thing in a quick fashion. So I'm going to do quickly going back here, creating a new data pipeline 30. And I'm going to type everything all together in it, which is basically copy data from the customer sales lt.customer table. In fact, it goes further. So if you look into this one, it actually is copying from 2 different tables. So now we are expanding the scope, and this is how you can use Copilot to do more complex stuff. I'm telling the Copilot now that copy it from multiple tables, sales LT customer and then sales LT product as well, in Azure SQL database into my lakehouse, and I'm specifying the table names, sales LT customer and product over there. And when I hit on this, now you saw the first one example was very simple. Now I'm going further detail, with specifying multiple tables, and this is a single shot because I have put in all the information around the table, the connection, and what it needs to do, and it gets me to a state where I can go ahead and validate this pipeline, and it's all correct. It has all the wiring done, which is basically around my database, table name, the other copy activity created with the other table name. So it was able to parse my complex instruction and being able to generate a pipeline which will basically do that action. So the point is that you can now, rather than building those pipelines, you can start documenting what you want, what your business requirements are, and then use the Copilot to generate those pipelines, and you can generate n number of those pipelines with n variations based on your requirement. So that is one use case for the Copilots as well. And so that was where you saw generation of a simple pipeline, and then we went into a slightly more complex pipeline, so it can understand that as well, which is great. Now, how about looking into things like summarizing pipelines or looking into someone else's pipeline? So we talked about a scenario where we have a slightly more complex pipeline, and here's an example. So you can see there's a for each construct, and there's copy inside that for each, and then there is a notebook and a data flow call. So this is truly, we are doing ELT, where extract, load, and transform, where you're extracting the data from multiple tables. So you're iterating over for each across multiple tables, and then you're basically running a notebook for transformations, and then again data flow for further transformations, probably taking from silver to the gold layer, right? So it's a simple ETL pipeline, very, very common pipeline. Everyone does it, especially metadata-driven pipelines. And now let's have a quick look. If you were entering into this state, you would basically click on summarize this pipeline, the left button on the top. And what it does is it summarizes the pipeline. It tells you exactly what it's doing. It's for each iterates over a list of items specified, and the parameter CW items AG6. So this is my parameter, and you can see it's basically a JSON value of all my tables that it needs to iterate over, like address, and then destination, folder paths, and so on. So this is where it goes into the metadata, looks into this parameter, and then parses the values, and then iterates over it, and parameterizes the value inside my copy accordingly. So it's puts sales LT address and all the values that it picked up from this parameter, basically, which contains the metadata. Now, what you can do is you can, if you want to truly test the Copilot, this really helps you understand what this is doing. It explains you it's doing a for each, and then copying the data, and then goes into product count by color. Basically, it's a notebook, and then sales LTETL. Basically, it's my data flows, which it refreshes. But you can also use this instruction, and you can recreate these pipelines. So you can do both ways. You can summarize your complex pipelines, and if you would want some changes in these pipelines, you can use it the other way around. You can easily set up a new pipeline. Let's use this one. I'll refresh this, and I can go ahead, create a pipeline, and I copy pasted the same stuff that I got from my summary, and you would see that the Copilot can also look into that summary of an existing pipeline, and then it goes ahead and generates the pipeline for me. So it has the same structure. It has a for each, it has a copy, it has a notebook, it has a data flow transformation. So this is the value. You can use it both way to summarize the value, and you can use the summary to actually generate the pipelines as well. And this is extremely useful when you're especially collaborating and doing things with others' pipeline. This is where you can take it to incremental development as well. For example, when I pasted this string, I could have modified it by, for example, saying add an email activity on failure or success. And what it would do is you can take the summary of previous pipelines or someone else's pipelines, and you can build more complex pipelines on that by adding or appending more instructions and then passing it to the Copilot. So that was another demo that I wanted to show you, that you can go further level of complexities, and you can even use summary skills and the creation skills all together in tandem as well. And with this, I would come back now to the next set of demos, which is we saw the summary skill, we saw the complex pipeline generation skill, and the third part, which is the most fascinating for me, is when I'm running these pipelines and I'm getting errors left, right, and center. That happens with all of us, with all the data engineers, and so this is where people who are monitoring these pipelines, they need more help from Copilot to understand and help troubleshoot those and then fix those things as well. So I'll show you two scenarios here, two pipelines that we need to fix here. The first one is a more complex pipeline. It's a daily ETL pipeline, which is bringing a lot of data, doing a lot of transformations, and you can see that there are some steps where things are failing in the data flows. And pipeline is basically orchestrating these data flows. Now, what we have added with Copilot here, especially for monitoring, is once you get inside the pipeline which has run, and if it has a failure, you would see the Copilot icon next to the failed activities. And this is very, very helpful because sometimes you don't know, you're collaborating and you don't know that particular data flow, what it's doing and where it's failing. And so it's very helpful if someone can tell you what's the issue. And I hit on the Copilot button on the right hand pane. You saw the Copilot icon, the Copilot pane comes up, and it tells me what that issue is, and it tries to give me recommendations as well. So it tells me that the data flow refreshes fail, and that's the reason. And it shows me the status of it. I don't have to go inside the data flow refresh history to find that information. And then it tells me what are the preventive actions that I need to take to fix this issue, right? And so it's pointing me towards review the data source of the connectivity or permissions issue. That's likely why the refresh failure with the 20302 comes up, right? And so I can go ahead and look into the data flow and update that. And this really helps you nail down the issues that you're facing in a pipeline and summarize those issues and maybe share it with the data flow owners or fix it yourself. The second one, which I wanted to show you, which is more actionable, is the other issues in the pipeline that I'm getting with the load app figures data, right? And so I'm going to go inside this pipeline. It's again created by another user, but what it's doing is it's again a metadata driven pipeline where it's copying data from multiple tables and then loading into processing that data and then finally loading that into a lakehouse table. So you can think of again an ELT loading the data into bronze using the for each and copy activity, and then it's transforming and cleansing, preparing the data using a notebook. Now, while doing so, notebook is throwing an error, which let's see. I can troubleshoot. I'm not a notebook expert, but I'm a pipeline expert, and I'm monitoring my pipeline, and notebook is failing. And I used collaborative efforts of my colleague who built this notebook for me, and I'm executing that notebook. Now, let's see if we can find more details with the Copilot on what's going wrong. Now, when you hit the Copilot button on the right-hand side, now it's refreshing and it's sending some text around trying to figure out what that issue is. What you would see in this is it understands what this error code is, 2451, and it's failing. And it's also giving me information about why it's failing. It's failing because there is a missing column, new underscore total underscore ratings. Now, the magical part over here is I don't have to go inside a notebook. I don't even know what that notebook is. I know my colleague wrote that. He did a great job, but I don't know what the problem is. But now it tells me at a very top level that it's failing because of a schema issue where a particular column name is basically missing in my notebook, in my data frame, and that's what it's causing a problem. And I can easily notify my friend that this is probably one of the issues. And so please verify or follow these instructions around verifying that particular column name in the notebook, whether it exists or not. If there's any typos, suggest if you haven't created a column by that name, it's probably due to that. And then we can even jump inside the notebook. For example, you can click on Update Pipeline, click on this notebook activity and even jump inside that, and you can quickly validate all the data frames that we are creating. And it's probably because my dimension that I have created over here for the data frame has a particular missing column, which is causing an issue because it's trying to either load a data into a table which does not support that particular column. And so these are ways or means how you can use AI to be more productive, to understand the different issues and errors that people are getting, not just in pipelines, but in other items that pipeline is orchestrating. And so these are the values that we are adding with the three different Copilot experiences that you saw in pipelines. And so that was the demo from my side on Copilot for Data Factory for data pipelines and data pipelines. And I think what we will do in the next 12 minutes is both Wilson and I are looking forward to your questions. So if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer those questions, and we'll keep the remaining 10 minutes for answering any of your FAQ questions.
So Abhishek, I see a question online. It asking for, are these coming to ADF?
Great question. No, our current plan is to have the AI experiences and the Copilot experiences in Fabric. So these are experiences that you would find in Fabric. At the same time, I would also want to say that we have built a lot of we have worked a lot of on parity between ADF pipelines and Fabric pipelines. So we do expect that parity to help users to look into Microsoft Fabric for doing things that they are doing in ADF as well. And so all the Copilot experiences that you saw today is specific to Microsoft Fabric, and we do not have plans of having them in ADF at this point in time.
Great question, though.
Great. Then I would like to thank you, all of you, again for attending a session on how you can use Copilot to be more productive, and how you can use AI in Data Factory to be more productive. And we wish to see you again in our future talks and sessions. And wishing you a nice day for rest of you. Have a good day. Bye bye.